Get out! Max, what are you doing? I yelled, frustrated, as our retired search and rescue dog suddenly leapt into the dry bathtub and refused to move. He was a professional, but this looked like a senile breakdown. I reached in to pull him out, but he snarled at the drain with a terrifying intensity. That was the moment the air shifted, and I realized he wasn't being stubborn. He was pinning down an invisible killer that was seconds away from filling our home. If you've ever ignored a dog's strange behavior until you realized it was a warning, stay with me. And if a mouse has ever alerted you before danger arrived, tell me in the comments. Stories like this are why people subscribe here. I'll tell this the way it happened, carefully, exactly as I remember it. It was late afternoon, quiet, ordinary. The kind of calm that makes you underestimate everything. We were home alone that day, just me, the house, and the dog. He was a certified search and rescue dog, but retired. Older now, slower, no more missions, no more gear. Just a family dog with habits we'd grown used to. He usually slept through the afternoon. That's why it stood out when he suddenly lifted his head. Not at a sound, not at movement, at nothing I could see. He stood up, sniffed the air once, then turned down the hallway toward the bathroom. I remember smiling and saying his name, thinking he just needed water. He didn't look back. He walked straight into the bathroom, jumped into the empty bathtub, and sat down, rigid, alert, staring at the drain. "Hey," I said, confused. "What are you doing?" He didn't move. That was the moment I felt it. Not the smell, not yet. Just that quiet pressure in my chest that tells you something isn't right, even before your senses catch up. He wouldn't get out of the tub. That was the first thing that made it wrong. I stood in the doorway of the bathroom, one hand on the light switch, watching him sit there, perfectly still, spine straight, head angled downward like he was listening to something coming up through the pipes. "Come on," I said lightly. "Out!" He didn't even flick an ear. I stepped closer. The porcelain was dry, the faucet off. Nothing unusual about the room at all. No steam, no water, no smell. Yet the dog stayed frozen in place, eyes locked on the drain. "Hey," I said again, firmer this time. "Out!" He shifted his weight slightly, paws scraping against the tub, but he didn't stand. Instead, he leaned forward, nose hovering inches above the drain, and let out a low, unfamiliar sound. Not a growl, more like a warning under his breath. My stomach tightened. I reached in and touched his shoulder. He flinched, not away from me, but toward the tub, bracing himself like he expected pressure. That's when I noticed his breathing, short, controlled, purposeful, like he was working. I pulled my hand back. "What is it?" I whispered. He finally looked at me then, just once, and in that look, steady, unblinking, there was no confusion, no fear, only urgency. The dog shifted again and pressed his nose directly against the drain cover. Then he barked. Once, sharp, echoing off tile. I jumped. "Okay," I said, my voice suddenly thin. "Okay, I hear you." I crouched down, peering into the tub like that would explain something. The metal drain cover looked normal, dry, clean. Then I heard it, a faint hiss. So quiet I almost dismissed it as the pipe settling. The dog barked again, louder. He pawed at the drain once, twice, then sat back down hard, refusing to move. That was when the air changed. Not a smell yet, a pressure, the kind you feel in your sinuses before your brain names it. I stood up fast. "What?" I started. The hiss grew slightly louder. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. I backed away from the tub, suddenly aware of how small the bathroom felt, how enclosed, how little ventilation there was. "Come on," I said, urgency creeping into my voice now. "We're leaving." The dog didn't budge. He leaned forward again, paws planted wide, blocking the tub like he was guarding it. "No," I said sharply, "out, now." He barked again, and this time, he stood, not to leave, but to block me. He stepped between me and the hallway, forcing me back into the bathroom, eyes flicking from my face to the door and back again. My heart raced. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "Move." He didn't. He turned back toward the tub, then looked at the door again. Then it hit me. He wasn't blocking the exit. He was keeping me from moving deeper into the house. The hiss grew louder, and then, finally, I smelled it. Gas. Sharp. Metallic. Wrong. "Oh my God," I breathed. The dog barked again, relentless now, and lunged back into the tub, planting himself there like an anchor. I realized then what he was doing. The bathtub drain. The lowest point in the room. Gas sinks. I stumbled backward, adrenaline flooding my system. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking. "Okay. I'm listening." I moved toward the window and threw it open. Cold air rushed in. The dog stayed in the tub, watching the drain, guarding it. I grabbed my phone from the counter, hands trembling, and backed out of the bathroom slowly, careful not to touch any switches. The dog didn't follow. He stayed there, holding position. As the smell crept farther into the hallway, I finally understood the part that made my chest tighten. He hadn't jumped into the tub to hide. He jumped in to warn me, and to keep me from walking straight into something I couldn't yet sense. "You're a good boy," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Thank you." He didn't look at me. He was still listening. I didn't leave the house right away. That still bothers me. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I didn't yet understand how fast things were moving. I backed into the hallway, phone pressed tight in my hand, every sense suddenly sharp. The gas smell followed me, thin but unmistakable now, curling through the air like it had been waiting for permission. Behind me, the dog stayed in the bathtub. He didn't pace, didn't panic, didn't follow. He held position. I called emergency services with shaking fingers, whispering as if volume itself could make things worse. I gave the address, said gas out loud, and felt my throat tighten around the word. "Get outside immediately," the dispatcher said. I looked back toward the bathroom. The dog barked. Once. Sharp. Directional. "Not come here. Stay back." "I can't leave him," I said into the phone, my voice cracking. The dispatcher repeated herself, firmer now. The dog barked again, twice this time, and moved, not toward me, toward the doorframe of the bathroom. He planted himself sideways, blocking the hallway, physically cutting off my path deeper into the house. I stopped. My heart hammered. He glanced at me, then back toward the tub, then toward the open window, mapping the room in a way I couldn't. That's when I realized something important. He wasn't just reacting to the gas. He was managing flow, where it could go, where it shouldn't. I followed his lead. I opened another window down the hall, then backed away again, careful with every step. The dog barked once more, satisfied, then returned to the tub. The hiss from the drain was louder now. I could hear it clearly, and the smell, stronger, heavier, was beginning to press against the back of my throat. The dog pawed at the drain again, then sat back hard, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Working. I stayed near the front door, watching him from a distance, hard in my ears. "You're doing great," I whispered, though I didn't know if he could hear me over the noise. "Just keep doing what you're doing." Minutes passed like hours. Every so often the dog barked, short, sharp warnings that coincided with subtle changes I could barely register. A shift in the hiss, a thickening of the smell. Each time I adjusted, opened another window, stepped farther back, stayed still. When I moved too fast once, he barked immediately, stopping me mid-step. I froze. He was right. The air near the kitchen felt heavier. I backed away. That made 3 times now. 3 moments where he intervened before I understood the risk. And each time his actions weren't dramatic. They were precise. Eventually I heard sirens. Distant at first, then closer. The dog heard them before I did. He stood in the tub, ears up, and barked. Not alarmed this time, but different. Higher. Alerting. "Help's coming," I said, tears burning my eyes. "You did it. You did so good." He didn't relax. Not yet. Only when the knock came at the front door, hard, authoritative, did he finally step out of the tub. He shook once, quick and controlled, then trotted toward the door, stopping several feet back, still watching. I opened it. Firefighters moved fast, scanning the house with equipment I didn't recognize, Voices clipped and urgent. One of them paused when he saw the bathroom. Dog in there? He asked. Yes, I said quickly. He alerted me. The firefighter nodded, already understanding. He's right, he said. Gas collects low. He picked the safest place. They ushered me outside as they moved in. I stood on the lawn, shaking now that the adrenaline had nowhere to go, watching through the open door as they worked. One of them glanced back at the most and shook his head slightly. Smart dog, he muttered. The dog sat just inside the doorway, watching them work. Still on duty. They shut off the gas at the street. That should have been the end of it. But the dog didn't relax. I stood outside with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching firefighters move in and out of the house, their voices low, serious. The smell of gas drifted out in waves now, strong enough that even from the yard it made my eyes sting. One of them came over to me. You did the right thing calling, he said. This could have gotten bad. How bad? I asked. He hesitated. Fast, he said finally. That word stayed with me. Fast. Inside the house, the dog was still visible through the open doorway. He wasn't pacing, he wasn't anxious. He was sitting, facing the bathroom, as if the danger hadn't fully left yet. A firefighter crouched near him and tried to guide him out gently. Come on, buddy, he said, coaxing. The dog didn't move. The firefighter paused, then looked back at his partner. He's not wrong, he said. Let him stay. They went back to work. I watched the scene like it was happening to someone else, detached, delayed, until a loud clank echoed from the bathroom. The dog barked, sharp, immediate. Two firefighters turned at once and moved quickly down the hall. A minute later, one of them came back out, his face tight. There's more, he said. My stomach dropped. They found the source of the leak, an old pipe beneath the tub, corroded enough to crack just slightly under pressure. Not enough to be obvious, enough to leak steadily, silently. And there was something else, a secondary valve that hadn't closed properly when the main line was shut off. Residual gas, still coming through, still pooling, the lowest point in the house. The bathtub. That's why he wouldn't leave, and the firefighter said quietly, glancing back inside. It wasn't over yet. I felt my knees weaken. If I had gone back in, if I had ignored him, if I had insisted on pulling him out, the thought made me dizzy. They finished the repair an hour later, ventilated the house thoroughly, ran tests, checked everything twice. Only then did the dog stand up. He walked out of the bathroom slowly, almost stiffly, like he'd been holding himself in place for too long. He came straight to me. And for the first time since he jumped into the tub, he leaned into my legs and let his weight settle. I sank down with him, wrapping my arms around his neck, shaking now that it was safe to do so. You knew, I whispered into his fur. You knew before any of us. He didn't respond. He just breathed, deep, even. The firefighters packed up their gear. One of them paused before leaving and crouched down to scratch behind the dog's ears. Good job, he said softly. You saved a life today. The dog's tail thumped once. That night, even after they cleared just to go back inside, I didn't turn the lights on right away. I stood in the doorway listening. The house felt different, empty in some places, heavy in others. The dog walked in ahead of me and did a slow circuit. Bathroom first, then the hallway, then the kitchen. He sniffed the air carefully, methodically. Only when he was satisfied did he lie down. Near the bathroom door, still guarding, I sat on the floor beside him, exhaustion crashing over me all at once. The truth settled in quietly then. This wasn't just a warning, it was a sustained rescue. Minute after minute, while I hesitated and second-guessed, he stayed in the most dangerous place in the house, holding position so I wouldn't have to. That's when the unease deepened into something else. Gratitude, and a new understanding of what search and rescue really meant. Not sirens, not crowds, not dramatic saves. Sometimes it meant a dog, alone in a bathtub, listening to a danger you couldn't smell yet, and refusing to move. If you're still listening right now, it's because you can feel how close this came to going wrong. If a dog has ever warned you before you understood the danger, tell me in the comments and subscribe, because what happened next is why this story still stays with me. After the house was declared safe, everything slowed. Not all at once. Gradually. The sirens faded, the firefighters left, the neighbors drifted back inside. Evening settled in like it always did. Quiet, unremarkable, almost ordinary. But the dog didn't return to ordinary. He followed me room to room, not out of anxiety, but with a steadiness that felt intentional. If I stopped, he stopped. If I turned back toward the bathroom, he stood, always between me and that doorway. I noticed then how tired he looked. Not the loose, sleepy tired of a long walk, but the deep fatigue that comes from holding focus for too long. His movements were slower now, his breathing heavier. Yet every time the air shifted, even slightly, his ears lifted. I sat on the bathroom floor for a while, just watching him lie there. The tub was empty again, dry, harmless looking. The drain quiet. It was hard to believe that minutes earlier it had been the most dangerous place in the house. I reached out and rested my hand on his side. I could feel his breath move under my palm. "You can rest," I whispered. "It's okay now." He didn't move. He stayed facing the tub. That's when I realized something that made my chest tighten. He hadn't been guarding me. He'd been guarding the problem. He'd placed himself between the house and the rest of the house, between danger and everything else, until someone with tools and training could finish what he'd started. That night, I tried to sleep. The dog lay near the bathroom door, not blocking it anymore, just close enough to hear. Every so often, he'd lift his head and sniff the air, then settle again. I watched him more than I slept, because I trusted him now more than my own senses. In the early hours of the morning, I finally drifted off. I woke once to the sound of him shifting position. My heart jumped. But when I looked, he was simply lying down fully for the first time since the leak. Head on his paws, eyes closed, resting. The house was quiet, safe. When morning came, sunlight poured into the hallway. The bathroom looked like any other room again. No smell, no sound, no warning. But the dog still walked in first, sniffed once, then left, satisfied. I stood there alone for a moment, replaying everything in my head. The jump into the tub, the barking, the refusal to move, the way he managed the space without panic or confusion. And I understood something clearly then. Training fades, commands fade, age slows the body, but instinct doesn't. When it matters, it comes back exactly when it's needed. We didn't stay in the house that night, even after they told us it was safe, even after the air tested clean and the pipes were sealed. I packed a bag and slept somewhere else. The dog didn't object. He followed calmly, got into the car without hesitation, and laid down like his work was finally finished. That alone told me everything. The next morning, we returned with daylight and distance on our side. The house smelled like nothing at all. That was the strangest part. No warning, no trace, no evidence of how close it had come. If the dog hadn't jumped into the tub when he did, if he hadn't refused to move, there would have been nothing left to smell. And I walked through the house slowly, opening windows again, touching walls, grounding myself in the ordinary. The dog went straight to the bathroom. He didn't jump into the tub this time. He stood at the edge and sniffed the drain. Once, twice. Then he stepped back. That was it. He turned away and walked down the hallway, tail low but relaxed, the way it always looked after a long day. The job was done. Later, a technician came by to explain everything more thoroughly. He talked about pressure buildup, about how gas follows gravity, about how bathtubs and basements become traps before people ever notice. "You're lucky," he said. "Most folks don't realize until the smell hits everywhere." I looked down at the dog. "He realized before that," I said quietly. The technician nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, "some of them do." That afternoon, I sat on the bathroom floor again, same spot as before, watching the dog nap nearby. Not guarding, not listening, just sleeping. His chest rose and fell steadily, each breath calm and unhurried. I thought about all the training he'd had over the years, the drills, the searches, the long nights and loud places. And then I thought about how none of that mattered in the end. What mattered was one moment, one decision, one leap into a bathtub when nothing smelled wrong yet. He hadn't waited for confirmation. He hadn't waited for instruction. He trusted what he sensed and acted. That realization stayed with me longer than the fear ever did, because it changed the way I listen now. Not just to alarms or devices or experts, but to the quiet warnings that arrive before panic has a name. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the house filled with shadows again, the dog laid down near the hallway, his usual spot. Not the bathroom, not the tub, just home. I sat nearby, listening to the normal sounds of life returning. Pipes settling, wind brushing against windows, the faint hum of the refrigerator. None of it meant danger anymore. I reached out and rested my hand on his back. "Thank you," I said softly. He didn't open his eyes. He didn't need to. If this story made you realize how much danger can move without sound, how much trust we place in our senses alone, subscribe so stories like this don't disappear unheard. And leave a comment. Has a dog ever warned you before you knew what you were facing? The gas never reached the hallway because a search and rescue dog chose the most dangerous place in the house and stayed there until the danger ran out of time.